I'm John Heilemann, and this is the Hell and High Water Podcast.
My guest today, Dr. Mike Osterholm.
This year, the 4th of July is a day of special celebration, for we are emerging from the darkness of years, a year of pandemic and isolation, a year of pain, fear, and heartbreaking loss. Today, all across this nation, we can say with confidence, America is coming back together. 245 years ago, we declared our independence from a distant king. Today, we are closer than ever to declaring our independence from a deadly virus.
We're getting back to, the things that we love. I mean, think about it. Hugging the people we love. Catching up with our friends face to face. Smiling at strangers. This is Independence Day weekend, almost, and I'm so glad that we can spend it here with the people who matter to us most. And doesn't the air just smell so much sweeter without our masks?
It did. It smelled a lot sweeter without our masks, Mike. And then now we have our masks back on. I'm not playing the sound just to mock them, right? They were caught up in a moment, as were a lot of us. I mean, everybody, including myself, of optimism about the possibility that we turned the corner on this virus, and everybody was, natural human inclination to be to start to kind of get back to normal, given the nightmare we'd gone through for the year prior. We all got a little over our skis. Is there stuff we can point to right now where we say these are other bad consequences that came from that moment where we should have been more cautious and that we should learn from for the future?
One of the things I think that hasn't really been understood is just what is the influence of the media and what is the influence of programs like this. And you have done a great job of covering this topic. But, I, as some know, I've often been labeled and unfortunately as Dr. Doom or Dr. Gloom, because I said right through the spring into the early summer that this virus was not done with us and that we had a sufficient number of people in this country who had not been vaccinated nor having previous infection, that we could see a surge just like we saw and we're seeing now. And so for me, I'm not surprised where we're at right now at all. But it was really hard to talk about that. And I actually had news media shows. As you know, I've been on a number of them, one of the talking heads, where producers would say, we're just not interested in having your message right now. So, we're kind of going to take a pass on that because we're beyond that now. We're out there. We're okay. And, there was no amount of scientific reasoning that would come with that. A number of my colleagues who, again, I'll label affectionately the talking heads like myself, who assured the public that, in fact, all the modeling data said the summer was going to be quiet and we might see a little bit of an uptick in the fall. And I think that we all collectively, as a nation, helped each other get to that point of what you heard the president and the first lady say. And it wasn't just politics. It wasn't just, it was the media. It was everybody.
Yep.
And so I think that what we need now is just, how do we talk about this without it being Dr. Doom or Gloom? I'll tell you right now, this surge, which is bad, it could get even worse if we see some of these regional areas like the Southeast, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina really emerge as they appear to be now, or the Northwest, or the upper Midwest, or even Southwestern United States. We could see this surge prolonged for at least another 6 to 8 weeks. But it's going to go down. It's going to go down. And we're going to hit another October, early November time period where I think things will be very quiet in this country. But we'll still have 80 million people left who will not have been vaccinated or protected from this virus by having had it yet. Yeah. 80 million is a lot of wood for this coronavirus forest fire to burn.
Yeah.
So when the next surge happens, are we going to be just as surprised? Are we going to be taken back by that? And I think that's the mindset that we have to start looking at this pandemic in. And clearly on a global basis, that's it. I mean, you may not like the data in terms of where it comes from, but Iran has just gone through their 5th surge. Everyone said after the 2nd surge they were done. They'd hit herd immunity. And in this 5th surge, they hit the highest number of cases ever just last week. So I think the world isn't yet prepared to understand that this pandemic is going to go on for a while. And until we do a better job of getting the world vaccinated, we've got to understand we're going to be living with this.
If you allow the virus to freely circulate in 93 million people and give it the opportunity to find vulnerable targets, you give it the opportunity to mutate and form another variant. People say, well, I'm healthy. The chances of my getting seriously ill is very, very low. So why do I need to worry about getting vaccinated? And the reason is it isn't all about you. Because if, in fact, you don't get vaccinated and you do get infected and you're part of the transmission chain and you allow it to infect someone else, you're propagating the ability of that virus to ultimately mutate. And if it does mutate to something that does evade the vaccine, then we really got a problem.
Yeah, then we've really got a problem. So is that coming? Or is that where Delta's really bad. It's even worse than we thought it was, Mike. But, Anthony Fauci and others, that's Fauci basically saying why everybody needs to get vaccinated, because if we don't get vaccinated, the variants will spread. But the last thing is the thing everyone's scared of, right? Is, are we on our way? And again, you have pointed out a number of times in this podcast and elsewhere that the virus is going to do what it's going to do. Is the virus kind of inevitably going to mutate eventually towards a thing that is resistant to these vaccines we developed?
Well, the long and short answer is we don't know. But let's just look at what evidence we have about what might happen. First of all, I do agree completely with Tony's assessment. For a virus to basically overtake Delta, for example, it's got to be a virus that has some advantage. Is it more infectious? Is it more likely to evade immune protection? Well, evolution is all about viruses or bacteria or any other living species finding an advantage over one of their others. And so, the gravity of the situation, meaning which way will something fall, is going to be that the only thing I see happening over time is that a virus either becomes more infectious to overtake Delta, or it does develop this ability to evade immunity. And I think we have to understand that that's a possibility. Will it absolutely happen? May not. Maybe what if Delta becomes the king of the block and is still around, 4 or 5 years from now? I don't know that. But the potential for that to happen is very real. And as much as Tony emphasized the 93 million Americans, which I fully agree with, I worry every day about the 6.4 billion people living in low and middle income countries that have had less than 2% of them having access to the vaccine.
Right.
So that's where we're really going to continue to see the variant spin out. And if there was ever a reason for an international response of emergency proportion, it's not just the humanitarian issues, it's all about stopping these variants, because we could have, John, one day, as Tony described, which could be much worse.
In July of 2020, at a CNBC virtual event, you said this is a very difficult virus to contain. It will never be fully stopped short of a vaccine, and even then it will be slowed down again. We're going to be dealing with this forever. What do you mean? What did you mean by that? What do you mean by that? What does dealing with it mean? What does forever mean? The possibility that it's never going to go away is the thing that terrifies most people.
Well, when a new infectious agent like this evolves from, in this case, the animal kingdom and gets into humans, we will likely have a continued experience with that for as long as humans are around. I mean, take an example of HIV/AIDS. When HIV/AIDS emerged really on a global basis back in the early 1980s, it had already been in the human population probably for decades in Africa, but not really spreading. When it took off, it caused the horrible, horrible pandemic that it did in a sense of global transmission. Today, it's still here. It's under a much more manageable condition in terms of drugs. We unfortunately still don't have a vaccine. In low and middle income countries, it still is taking a tremendous toll. And we're dealing with it. And most people would probably never even think of HIV/AIDS as having been a pandemic at one point, yet it is. Right. What I see happening with this virus is, it's not going to kill all of us off, or it wouldn't have any place to reproduce. So somewhere there's going to be a static state situation that will exist, where maybe it'll become a seasonal virus, where having 90-some% of the population either protected from vaccine or previously having had infection, and then we'll see these peaks every winter or whenever they occur. And so it's not going to be the same as we see with these surges. That happens in the earliest years. And unless somehow we have no long-term memory in terms of our immune systems, we will one day come into a static state with this, much like we did HIV/AIDS. And that's what we talk about by forever. So it's not the same with these surges like this, but it will nonetheless still be challenging. We're not going to ever eradicate it out of the human population. Imagine if we didn't have the very, very important drugs we have today for HIV/AIDS, because we don't have a vaccine yet for that. Imagine we'd be in a world ravaged by HIV/AIDS every day. Yeah. So I'm more optimistic long-term than I am obviously short-term. Short-term is where I think we have our real challenges. And so from that perspective, please, world, help us get everyone vaccinated. And again, all I can point out to you is if you don't get vaccinated, you will know potentially a very serious COVID outcome. And if it's not you, it may be someone you love. I have talked to too many parents who brought the virus home to their young children, where that child ended up in a pediatric intensive care unit. You don't want to be that parent, trust me.
Mike, thank you for taking the time. And words to live by and words to listen to, those last ones from Mike Osterholm. Thanks a lot, Doc. See you later. Thanks for watching. You can watch the full episode of Hell and High Water on the Recount streaming daily, or listen to it wherever you get your podcasts.